and welcome to Sound Like, and in today's video we're going to be looking at MK Ultra. From my view, MK Ultra has the best produced and well put together guitar sound from the whole of the album The Resistance where it features. This is because there is a strong through line throughout the entire song of what the guitar is trying to be. It's not dramatically changing from part to part, which usually can be quite interesting, but from my view there's issues with The Resistance in terms of the guitar sounds because this was the first time the band were producing themselves. It comes off as experimental, which is usually a good thing that I applaud, but I do think it fails. But the shining light of The Resistance is MK Ultra in terms of its composition, the way it's produced, and how the guitars sound. It's a relatively simple song in terms of how the guitar's produced, or at least how I'm doing it in my cover, which makes it really easy for you to follow along and learn all you can to get a good sound for MK Ultra. In terms of the demonstrations I'm using for this, I'll be using my new Manson throughout, and in terms of the amps that I'm using my St. James 6L6 plugin, as you can see here. With this I have quite a lot of control in terms of the sound that I can get out of it through various combinations of the amp heads versus the cabinets. With this I can get a lot of variation in terms of the sounds out of it through various combinations of amp heads and cabinets. What I'm using here are two 4x12 cabinets, but in my cover I did go through a combination of various other cabinets as well. But in terms of this demonstration, I'm relying on two 4x12 cabinets. I do get a lot out of the Blackstar St. James plugin that I'm using, as I do want an amp that lives inside my laptop, as it gives me the ability to use in-ears, loads of various combinations, and I can reamp multiple guitar takes as much as I want to get the correct and perfect sound that I'm after. In terms of the broad EQ settings for your amp, as always with a lot of Muse songs, I would suggest rolling off a bit of the bass to about 10 to 11 o'clock. Really push the mids to about 3, maybe 4, and have the treble around maybe 12 to 1, depending upon how bright the pickups in your guitar are. So with all that out of the way, let's get started. So first up for MK Ultra is the opening riff along with the verse. Now I'm just kind of putting all of this sound into one part because I'm using the same effects. So what I'm going for, how I'm articulating this sound, is starting with my whammy on a harmony octave down. This is an effect that I've used for quite a lot of Muse songs across their entire discography. It works to great effect to really thicken out that sound and get much more strength out of a lot of big riffs if we're going for the lower octave, or it only brings out that kind of higher sounds if we're using the octave up. And in this instance for MK Ultra, I'm using it in a way I wouldn't normally use, being quite high up on the neck but pushing a harmony octave down. I don't know quite what Matt used in the studio for the effect for this for MK Ultra. There's an argument that he used an MXR Blue Box, but to me at the very least it does sound like multiple octaves or multiple kind of layering parts of guitars, and so the harmony octave down through a whammy works really well. The whammy pedal is a pedal that's used for quite a lot of Muse songs, and it's been a staple on Matt's board in one form or another since at least the year 2000. So we're taking the whammy pedal and then going into my Boss OS2, set all the way over on an overdrive sound, so there's no distortion, it's just an overdriven sound. A very accessible sound that hopefully all of you have got on your board somewhere. The drive is on about 2 to 3 o'clock with the tone at somewhere that just sounds good. After that, that's then going into my DD8 for some delay. Now it's not an overly massive sound, it's just building a little bit of ambience to keep some kind of atmosphere going. It's not a explosive sci-fi type sound. So the level of the delay is at about 11 o'clock to 10 o'clock, and the feedback is around 11 to 12. This is so that it helps to create some sort of relatively thick sound by not having the delay decay so straight away, so it hangs around for a bit, so it builds up that ambience. And that reduced level helps ensure the delay is not overpowering the original signal that's in there, and so that it helps to create that bed of atmosphere. It's an approach I've used for quite a lot of use of delay in Muse songs, and it's used to great effect here, along with the use of the whammy pedal in a way that it's used for quite a lot of Muse sounds as well. So keeping that in mind, this sort of approach works really well for a lot of Muse songs. So taking it a step back, when I've talked about how Muse kind of produced themselves for The Resistance, this so far in their discography is an approach that worked well for them and stood them in good stead, where they weren't trying to experiment too greatly and they were working with sounds that really worked best for them. They were tried and tested and they know exactly how to use these effects. I'll stop ribbing The Resistance here because that's not the aim of this video. What we're here to do is to listen to some guitar. So with the signal chain established, let's see what it sounds like. Moving on to the next section now, to what I'm calling the pre-chorus. I'm not so sure if it is, but it makes sense to call it that to me. So we've gone from that big octave down with delay overdriven sound to another overdriven sound, but we're taking it a little bit differently. With a lot of my sounds that I have and how I approach guitar tones, I like to have a different sound for each section. So I could simply take out the whammy and the delay and just use the overdrive from that. But we want to use that drive later on, so we want to have something a little bit different. So I take out my S2 and bring in my MXR Timmy overdrive. This is an out and out overdrive pedal. Now it doesn't have as much drive if you crank it as the OS2 does if you crank it, but it has a different color, a different kind of feel to it entirely. And with that kind of reduced kind of gain output, that's where I want to be. This part of the guitar tone, unlike what we've had previously, is not trying to be the center focus of the sound. It's just supporting the rhythm, because it's literally just a rhythm section. So I don't want anything that's just too crazy and out there. So I have the gain on the Timmy overdrive to about 3 o'clock. Again, it's not as much as the OS2, which again was on 3 o'clock as well. So that reduced level of gain really helps to articulate the sort of sound that I'm looking for. It's got a great full-bodied sound to it, with a bass and a treble control to really articulate the sounds that I'm looking for. So I've got the bass at 10 o'clock and the treble at around 1 to 2 o'clock. With that bass rolled off a little bit, it's not trying to overpower that low end, and it relies much more on the brightness from the pedal that we're getting. Again, it's not trying to overpower everything, it's just supporting the rhythm. And as a guitar is not a very bass heavy instrument, we want to focus on that mid-range, which is really where that treble control really operates. It's a very simple approach to the effect. It's not trying to do anything crazy. In a lot of sound likes that I've done as well, I've had a pedal on each channel, so I can have a fuzz on one and an overdrive on the other. This isn't happening here with this. It's not trying to do something too crazy, because if you listen to the song itself, the guitar is very simple. So you want to have that very simple approach, and it really speaks to the tried and tested approach that Muse have had in previous albums when they were doing the Resistance. It is a sound and approach that they've had for a while, and it fits perfectly into MK Ultra. So let's give it a listen. So moving on from the pre-chorus into the first chorus. There are two distinct guitar sounds that I'm using for this section. In the original version, there is of course only that low palm muted descending guitar part, which is fine, and that is in here. What I've also got is the guitar part from the second chorus, but used in a much more atmospheric way. So let's focus on the descended palm muting guitar part first. What this is simply just my MXR prime distortion. It's a very different sound from anything we've had previously. Those were just overdrives. This one's an out and out distortion, so the profile and color of that sound is completely different. And as we're palm muting, that sound is much more distinct as well. In terms of the settings on the prime distortion, the drive is at 3 o'clock with the tone at around 11. It can be quite a bright pedal, especially in the rig that I've got, so really rolling off that tone is quite key. The way that I approached this particular sound, I wanted to have something that was clearly quite driven, but then also subdued because of the palm muting. So having something that was quite gainy was going to be really offset by that palm muting, so I leaned into it. So, and comparing that against the other guitar part, it works really well, as this is a very distorted guitar. Having quite a bit of an overdriven sound for this next part helps to kind of brighten that contrast as well, and where I obviously took a bit of artistic license. So the other part that I've got is still the Timmy overdrive, but it's going into the delay sound that we've had previously. To further the atmospheric feel for this part, I'm also using my volume pedal for the swells. This is what I used for when I recorded my cover, but for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to use it on my guitar, so you can see just how I used it and how it articulated that sound. It's used in exactly the same way, as it's simply just a volume control. I do really enjoy having a volume pedal on my board. It really helps to articulate different sounds, bring down the kind of gaininess if I want to bring down and rein in a guitar sound. It really helps to kind of improve improve and get much more out of my dynamics. So if you don't have a volume pedal and have ever wondered why you would possibly want one, this is a sort of instance where I'd really strongly suggest to at least think about having a volume pedal. Obviously for this guitar part they're both going at the same time, and because I recorded it and with layers of guitar, I can have both of those going on at the same time. If you are just playing MK Ultra to yourself, or you are doing it as a performance, you obviously only have the ability to pick one. So with this approach you can pick either or. They both work and they're both very different, so they're distinct. If you want something that's much more rocky, go for the gritty prime distortion kind of sound that I'm going for. But if you want to bring out the atmosphere and the kind of sci-fi nature of it, I guess, go for this kind of swelling guitar tone that I've got. And why not stop here to listen to what each of them sound like. Moving on now to chorus 2, and this gives us the ability to look at two distinct sounds for the same kind of essentially part of the song, as it's still a chorus. The chord structure is exactly the same and the lyrical content is the same. All that is different, I say all, is the production, the sound of it, the kind of the build of it. The instrumentation is a little bit different as well. So what we're doing is taking out both of the sounds that we've had before. The prime distortion sound is too much. The Timmy overdrive with the delay is too atmospheric. What I'm doing is getting rid of all of that and bringing back in my OS2. As I said before with the pre-chorus, the Timmy overdrive was the perfect pedal for that because it wasn't too driven, and the OS2 was a bit too much. This is where we bring back the OS2, as it has that same amount of grit as we've had for the spidery riff at the beginning, and it works really well in terms of the drive that it's got. Of course, Matt did not use an OS2 in the studio for this. He will have used different pedals or amp heads and so on, but I think that this pedal on this particular setting, all the way on the overdrive sound with quite a lot of drive behind it, really encapsulates the particular sound that we want to get here, which is an overdriven sound with a lot of guts behind it. There is nothing else in this signal chain. It is just the OS2. It works exactly as I want it to, and it sounds like this. The last section that we're going to be looking at now is the riff that comes after the first chorus and after the second chorus, and then there's that last build-up riff as well. This is the same tone throughout, and it is simply just the OS2 with all of the tone on the guitar rolled off. It's a very distinct sound. It's a sound that I think Matt has used, or the same sort of sound, not necessarily rolling off the tone, but it's a sound that I hear quite a lot, at least live, from Muse. It's a very simple kind of approach to getting a different sound that you've got. As we are using the Boss OS2, it's the same level of distortion as we've got from the chorus, but one thing has changed, and it really relates back to the idea that I have of every section should be different to make it distinct, to make it not boring, to make it pop, and also just to make it fun to play as well, to experiment with your sounds. It's an approach I've had for quite a while now when I've approached playing guitar for a big distinct riff such as this part for MK Ultra. It really brings out the kind of of low, gritty, kind of nasally mid-tone out of it, and pulls out a lot of the high end and the treble and so on. You would think that it would then make the guitar inaudible in a mix, because the high end is quite useful and kind of important to make the guitar pop in a mix, but there are still quite a lot of highs going on in there. It's just got that kind of dull tone in there to kind of bring out that low mid section. Yes, if you were doing it on a clean track, it really would sound like the guitar's coming from the next room, but putting it through a pedal where you can artificially at least bring out some high end and really bring up the distortion kind of helps offset how much detail you'd lose necessarily. I don't quite know how it works, I just know that it does. Rolling off the tone is a very simple approach, and it's a sound that is quite musy, so if you don't have a lot of pedals on your board at home, or you're looking for a new sound and you've never tried it, do give it a go. It works for so many things. The Stockholm Syndrome riff in particular is one that really sticks out to my mind of something that really works for this. A lot of the drop D stuff, this approach really works for as well, and it's something that I get excited about because it really adds a distinct sort of sound to my overall guitar playing as well. Don't do it if you're ever kind of playing with rhythm sounds, because you need that high level detail and the brightness to really come out and help support the rhythm. This is just for single string riffs as we're looking at. And so with all that preamble out of the way, this is what it sounds like. So there we go, that was Sound Like MK Ultra in its entirety, based off of my cover. I hope it's articulated to you how simple guitar tone for Muse can really be. We often think that Matt Bellamy has a crazy approach to guitar and has some out of this world effects and so on, but if you really think about it, he's using fairly normal effects but just in a weird and interesting way, which means that you can use those same tactics, those same approaches to guitar tone to get something just as interesting, if not more so. I know that I may use quite a lot of specialized equipment like the guitar or the amp plugins or some of the pedals I've got, but don't let that stop you. Look at what you have and how you can use it and get the most out of it. That's what guitar playing is all about, getting the most out of what you've got. And if you want to use any of the equipment that I've used in this video as inspiration or research for next things that you want to get, please go right ahead and see what you can get out of the things that I use to help advance your guitar sound. So I hope you've enjoyed this Sound Like tutorial. If you have, do let me know down in the comments below, and while you're there, maybe let me know what you'd like me to cover in a future Sound Like video. I've been Harry, and thanks for watching.